Ooh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby.
Well, not much to talk about on Over the Rainbow this week, is there?
I think we can manage. We're a couple of Yankees. I think we can manage. With people like Raquel Welch on the list.
Well, I noticed a pattern that's very unusual for most of our shows.
Yeah, you know what? They're not like terribly young this week, are they?
Well, and I don't think any of them are Jews from Brooklyn.
Yes, there's one.
There's a Jew, but I don't know if he's from Brooklyn.
He is.
Okay, we'll get to that. But you're already our main feature on Over the Rainbow this week, Sharon, is going to be Raquel Toyoda. I mean,
yes.
I'm sorry. She changed it. She went with her first husband's married name. Raquel Welch.
Raquel Welch.
You have any problem pronouncing Raquel?
No problem at all.
They tried to get her to change her name. They thought people would have trouble pronouncing it.
What? I mean, she took her middle name. I mean, what was the problem with Joe? Did she not? It didn't sound sexy enough.
No, that's not what they wanted to change it to. They didn't want to go by Joe. They wanted to go by something else completely. Because they thought Raquel would be too difficult to pronounce.
Oh, God.
They wanted to go by Debbie.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
She's
right,
definitely.
Right.
You know, I mean, but when I'm looking to see what she died from, it just says brief illness. I think that if you're going to be sick, that's the way to do it. So not a whole lot of suffering there. I'll tell you though, it was interesting. When I saw that she had passed, the first time I remember seeing her was on a black and white movie called The Fantastic Voyage. And I loved that movie. It was great. But when I was doing the research, I found out that was her first movie, like ever. That was her first role. And that was quite incredible. It's what landed her a leading role in a movie called 1 Billion Years BC, which actually is what made her a star. I never saw that movie. Even just seeing the ads made me giggle.
Well, it was iconic, her in the bikini.
Yeah.
Now,
did you see it?
I did not. Now, you said starring role. She only had 3 lines. But
I know.
Was it because there weren't much dialogue in the movie?
Yeah. Yeah. They have her listed as a leading lady. It's like they have her listed as a leading lady, and then I read later she only had 3 lines. And I'm like, okay, not a lot of dialogue in that movie.
Yeah.
So, you know what, though? What was also interesting was I read that she almost died shooting that movie.
Really? How's that?
Yeah. They didn't say what happened. They just said she said in an interview that she almost died shooting that movie. So I'm going to say I guess it was worth it, the risk, because articles boast that it was her image as Leona in a prehistoric Daskin bikini for the film's poster that catapulted her into the limelight.
Yeah, it was at least as iconic as the Farrah Fawcett poster would be 10 years later.
The movie made her a star, and she made several movies after that. Most of the ones listed didn't spark any memories for me. There was one in there called Bedazzled, which, like, on the edge of my mind, I'm thinking, did I hear of that movie? I don't know. Did you hear of that movie?
No.
I don't know. So Then it goes on to talking about a string of movies that she made in the 60s. Now, this is a little more familiar. She made a string of movies that was very successful, landing
I
her the
do want to
role.
stop you for a moment first, though.
Yeah.
Frankie, Fantastic Voyage was one of her first featured parts. She'd actually been working already for several years. She had appeared in several TV series and movies. She was in The Virginian. She was in McHale's Navy, Bewitched. She had done several smaller parts,
Yeah,
probably a dozen or
but
so.
that's not film.
Yeah, no, she'd done film as well.
Yeah.
She was in Swingin' Summer, Do Not Disturb, Hollywood Palace.
The article I read said that was her very first role.
It might have been her first featured role. Might have been her first speaking role. But she was in a number of movies, at least 5 movies before that. So
right. Well, it did list these other movies that I never heard of. Then it mentioned in the 60s the role of Constance in Bonne Cruz, the dressmaker of the Queen in The Three Musketeers, for her performance in 1973, which was a live-action film. She was honored with a Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Actress in a Musical or Comedy. She was in Playboy's 100 Sexiest Stars of the 20th Century, and she came in 3rd.
She was very unique in that regard. Do you know what made her quite unique?
Wasn't it her bosoms? No?
She never posed fully nude. She never appeared on screen fully nude. And even when she was in Playboy, she never posed nude. And Hugh Hefner said she was probably one of the only and the last of the true sex symbols that could get away and still be completely sexy without having to.
They always put that symbol. They always put that symbol on somebody who becomes successful in pictures. The new sex goddess or sex symbol. Does it rankle you a little bit?
Not anymore. In the beginning, I used to get a little bit perturbed because it seemed to, I don't know, there seemed to be a stereotyped idea of what a sex symbol was, sort of vapid and not too bright and not with much ability or.
Doesn't hold true, really.
Well, I don't know if it does or not, but it's kind of, it makes you feel that you're limited in some way, and so you kind of fight against it. But I don't think that you can really fight against an image. It's something that you can't control, don't you think?
I've tried to control mine, you know. You said once, I think, and when we talked together, that you didn't want to start to be known just as, you know, doing layouts, because you were in Playboy once.
Doing which?
Yeah, you know, doing pictures with, doing what? What was that? I missed that. I'm not thinking well tonight. Do you know what I'm getting at? That you didn't want to be just known for removing your, divesting yourself of your garments.
Well, actually, I never have done
That's
a
very
nude,
nice.
and I sort of have made a statement, I guess, in the beginning of my career that I wasn't particularly interested in doing Playboy. I think they have enough candidates to fill the book each month, and I don't see why I have to join the ranks. I don't think that it's sort of a necessary thing.
Not
and I mean, I if I'm already sort of accepted as a glamorous type or a sex symbol, or that is the image that's grown around me, it seems like almost gilding the lily, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't need it.
Be nude.
All right, well, in a minute, I'm going to ask you a question about our next honoree concerning that. It says, though, yeah, now, so then as I was reading, I read that she got her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1994. She did some guest appearances, which we call spin-offs on TV Spin City, CSI Miami. There's one here called The House of Versace, which I kind of remember hearing about it.
Versace? House of Versace?
Is that it? What is that?
The movie about the designer.
Oh, okay. And then it says, and most recently How to Be a Latin Lover. Her career spanned over 50 years, starring in over 30 roles, starring in over 30 films, 50 television series and appearances. And it says the Golden Globe winner in more recent years was involved in a very successful line of wigs. So
she had a couple of very important movie roles, even early on. she starred in Myra Breckenridge in 1970, where she played a transsexual.
Oh.
I mean,
Okay,
that's pretty rocking for 1970. She starred in a movie called Kansas City Bombers. I remember seeing that, where she played a woman, a star of roller derby. I believe it was Kansas City.
Oh, I thought I'm remembering Farrah Fawcett in a movie like that. I actually think it was a Charlie's Angels episode that I'm remembering.
Okay.
It was in her, yeah.
But she did, Farrah Fawcett, it's funny, Farrah Fawcett, Elizabeth Montgomery also got cred playing abused women. Raquel Welch played, won one of her awards for starring in The Right to Die. You know, about a woman with assisted suicide. And I believe she also played a victimized woman in another key role, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But she did not want to be just, and obviously it makes sense, she didn't want to be known for her body, for her beauty only. Right. So she did seek out roles that would allow her to expand and gain credibility.
I do remember her having beautiful hair, so when I read that she had been involved in a very successful line of wigs, I thought, wow.
That's right. In Right to Die, she played a woman with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And that ALS is probably, of those neurological illnesses, ALS is probably the worst.
It is.
The most devastating. It's strange. Gina Lola Brigida last week. Raquel Welch this week.
Yeah. And even Stella Stevens, who's our next honoree, whose name was Estelle Eggleston, who's 84. You know what? When we're talking about this,
Raquel Welch.
but you know what? When we're talking about diseases, she died from Alzheimer's, and that's a pretty devastating disease as well. I think almost more for the people who love you than for them. But the thing is, though, when I saw her name, there was instant recognition, and I couldn't remember one thing I'd seen her in. But it says in the article that I read, she was regarded as a Hollywood sex symbol. She found herself acting with leading men in both comedy and drama because you would have had to seen the Poseidon Adventure. Yeah, but like I say, I mean, I'm sure I saw her, but I didn't. You know, when you see a certain name, sometimes something instantly resonates with you, right? I couldn't think of one thing that I knew she was in.
There are some people who are famous for being famous.
No, I knew she had cred. I just, like I say, with Raquel Welch, right away that one movie popped into my head, and obviously she did more than that, but that's what popped into my head.
You have to remember that in 1984, Stella Stevens played Irene Danbury on an episode of Night Court. How could you forget?
I didn't watch Night Court.
How about Stella Maston on Murder, She Wrote in 1985?
Probably, but I didn't realize it. Like I'm saying, I know
she was Loretta Lolly Zachary Vanderpost on Magnum PI.
Yeah, she was also on The Nutty Professor. She was in The Courtship of Eddie's Father. She was in The Poseidon Adventure. I saw all those things. I just don't remember her being in them. Her, just like sort of the way we talked about Raquel, her film and television career spanned 50 years.
She was in General Hospital.
That one I
years.
missed. She was on series like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Bonanza, and The Love Boat. She worked with leading men like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lewis. But you know what? She was kind of insulted to be considered a sex symbol.
You've always played sexy Rose.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, you're right. Always been sexy. And, but then, what happened?
I haven't always played sexy roles. I have played nuns, and I have played Mother Superiors, where sex may have been there, but it was covered with a habit.
There was sex in there.
You kinky boy, you. Put on a nun's habit, and you get all turned on. That was fun, but it was not overtly sexy, let's put it that way.
Flamingo Road.
Flamingo Road, I played NBC's First Madam.
She really felt that she was more of a comedic actress. So she was very smart in the projects that she picked. She sort of alternated between something that was considered dramatic and something that was considered a comedy. She also appeared as Playboy's Playmate of the Month with an editorial titled Stella's Mistake. Playboy at least remained consistent in 1998. The magazine ranked so Raquel was number 3, but she was number 27 on the list.
When did she appear in Playboy? It wasn't 1998 that she appeared in Playboy, was it?
It just says Playboy at least remained consistent in 1998. She didn't appear in Playboy. She appeared as on the list of 100 sexiest stars of the 20th century. It kind of followed it. So, and Raquel was on that list too. Raquel was ranked number 3, and Stella was ranked number 27.
Who's first and second?
It didn't say. I kind of want to, after this is over, I kind of want to go see. But like I say, she hated being tagged as another stereotypical bombshell. And in an interview in a magazine that I've never heard of called Commercial Appeal in 2002, she stated, "I've always specialized in comedy. To keep from getting stereotyped, she alternated projects, including psychological horror. She starred in something called The Mad Room." That seems like your genre. Did you? You know?
What I was surprised, not familiar with it, but what I was surprised, because I was surprised that she did quite a bit of television.
Mm-hmm.
But I was more surprised that she actually chose to do television rather than film, and focus on
not
television.
only that, but she also did like low budget and B films. Like, you know, like there's the A film and the B films, and she did a lot of those. Mm-hmm. She liked playing odd roles. She was the villainous dragon lady in Cleopatra Jones and the Casino of Gold, which sort of reminds me of like Brandon Fraser and The Mummy kind of thing. She even did on occasion a low budget B film. There was, I don't remember, I didn't mark it down, but there was some movie she did that was actually directed by her son. From the 70s through the 90s, she did guest appearances, which we would call one-offs on Peyton Place, Fantasy Island. She was a regular on the 1980s primetime soap opera Flamingo Road. I know that. Yeah, I never watched that, but at least I know what it is. She was also the nefarious Mama Joe Max, which is like the... I guess, was she the wife to Boss Hoggs or something or other?
I didn't watch the show.
I didn't watch The Dukes of Hazzard, but it talked about a 1997 TV movie. She was on the Dukes of Hazzard reunion, and she played Mama Joe Max. Oh, she was supposed to be the successor to Boss Hoggs, it says. So I got that wrong a little bit, but at least I fixed it.
I'm looking at her last half dozen films or so between the 2000 to 2010. I don't even remember. Her final film role was in a movie called Megaconda. in 2010. She was in 3 movies in 2005. Pop Star, Hell to Pay, and Glass Trap. In 2004, she was in Blessed. In 2003, The Long Ride Home. I don't remember hearing of any of those movies.
I kind of remember The Long Ride Home. I didn't see it, though, but I heard of it.
I mean, her TV appearances,
like I'm saying, there is
higher profile shows.
Right, but like I'm saying, I knew who she was, but there wasn't one particular show that came to mind. But in reading about her, I think she was a romantic at heart, because I had to grab my quote. I read one of the last quotes that she gave was, "If there's anything I stand for in my life, it would be peace and harmony and trying to make the most of every moment of our lives. I believe that love can conquer hate." So I thought that's a beautiful quote.
Okay. All right. Anything more on Stella Stevens?
No, we're going to move along to sports. You were the one that yelled, "What?" when I told you that Tim McCarver had passed away. I think he's to Met fans what Phil Rizzuto is to Yankee fans. I have some notes, but I think I'm going to hand this off to you and pitch in because he's important to you.
Well, yeah, he was. You know, it's funny to me and to many people, of our age. The voice of the Mets will always be Lindsey Nelson, Bob Miller, and Ralph Kiner. Tim McCarver, though, was definitely the voice of the Mets, certainly during the '86 World Series and the seasons leading up to that. So yes, he's also the voice of the Mets, but he broadcast for several teams.
Oh yeah, he did. I mean, yes, he did, and he also he starred with the St. Louis Cardinals. He played for the Philadelphia Phillies, the Montreal Expos, and our hated Boston Red Sox.
But the bulk of his play
was
career
with the Cardinals.
The Cardinals and the Phillies. He kept bouncing back and forth. He bounced back and forth with the Cardinals and the Phillies several times.
Well,
I think
it says in the 21 years he played 12 of those with the Cardinals.
Right, but he was with the Cardinals on at least 2 different stints. He was with the Phillies on at least 2 different stints. As a matter of fact, I think one of the reasons he went from the Cardinals to the Phillies, or ended up with the Phillies, is when Steve Carlton went to the Phillies, he ended up with the Phillies. He pretty much spent the latter part of his career as Carlton's personal
So did
catcher.
he just stay for a sip of coffee with the Expos and the Red Sox?
Yeah, pretty much. But like I said, he was pretty much Carlton's favorite catcher. There's another very unique thing, or relatively noted thing about McCarver's baseball playing career that I'm sure you're aware of.
Which is?
What his first season was in 1959. He played until 1980, which means that his baseball career, he was a player who appeared in 4 different decades.
Mm-hmm.
The 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. That's
right.
Pretty unique.
Well, you know what else I saw? It said that as a batter, his career on-base percentage was .337. He had an OPS of .725. He had 645 career RBIs, 97 home runs, 1,909 games, and 3 World Series appearances, 64, 67, and 68. He hit .311 with 2 home runs and 11 RBIs. I'm thinking, in today's standards with the sabermetrics, could you imagine the amount of money this man could make? Those are awesome numbers. I don't know a lot of players with those kind of numbers in these days.
I'll give you one that flabbergasted me.
Yeah.
In 1966, he led the National League with 13 triples.
That's hard. That's
triples.
I mean, that's triples.
That's a lot of triples for but for a catcher to have 13 triples blew me away. That I never would have guessed.
Noted. Triples are like, even when somebody's going for, you know, what's that called? It's just kind of when you the cycle, you go for the cycle. Yeah. The triple is the hardest of all of them to get. Anybody starting out with a triple, then I'm excited. You know, if they start out, you know, they got a single, they got a double. It's like, all right, you get that triple in there. I'm like, all right. Yeah, so he went on to, now, of course, we know that when he retired, he transitioned into the broadcast booth. He went on to call games for the Phillies, the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, and the San Francisco Giants. I knew about the Phillies and the Mets and the Yankees, but I didn't know that he did the Giants. So,
I don't remember him doing the Giants, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he did. And from 1980 to 2002, and also worked national broadcast for ABC, CBS, and Fox. I wrote a little note to myself that, I liked Tim McCarver, but it talked about, like, his partner. Like, you can't, like, for the Yankees, it would be Rizzuto and Frank, but for the Mets, it was Tim McCarver and Joe Buck. Yankee fans can't stand Joe Buck because he hates the Yankees. So he's never fair when he talks about the Yankees. So Tim McCarver, I will give hands down, thumbs up. You know, good sports guy, very knowledgeable.
He broadcast. He covered more than 20 World Series.
The chance of a lifetime for Luis Gonzalez. 2-2, bottom of the ninth. Game 7 of the World Series. Bases loaded. Infield in. 1 out. Strike 1.
The one problem is Rivera throws inside the left-handers, and left-handers get a lot of broken bat hits in the shallow outfield, the shallow part of the outfield. That's the danger in bringing the infield in with a guy like Rivera on the mound.
Floater, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
Yeah, and he called 23 World Series and 20 All-Star games in his career, and he won the Ford C. Frick Award for broadcasting in 2012. He was inducted into the. Oh, you might have to help me with this one. He was inducted into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2016, and he won 3 sports Emmys during his career as well. What did he win Emmys for?
Well, I'm guessing for the broadcasting all the major baseball games. He did 20 All-Star games. He did 23 World Series.
I didn't know you could win Emmy Awards for that. Okay.
There are Emmy Awards. There are awards for everything.
Okay.
And he even, of course, is probably most famous for his releasing Tim McCarver singing songs from the Great American Songbook in 2009. A cover album of jazz standards.
There you go.
But he had a successful playing career and a successful broadcasting career.
Very much so. Very much so.
You know, it's funny, because baseball, I think, more than any other sport, the local broadcasters are almost as important as the players. Especially because baseball translates to radio better than any major sports. And therefore your broadcasters are literally your eyes and ears for the game.
That's a good way to look at it.
You know, So
I
we
still have
associate-
memories. Yeah, I still have memories of my transistor radio. You know, I'd turn it on the minute we got out of class, and on my walk home, I
You'd
would have
wait
my
till you got out of
transistor
class
radio.
to turn it on?
Yeah, I didn't turn it on in class. I was a good girl. But
Uh,
the minute I got dismissed, the radio came out of my pocket up to my ear, and I would just walk home really slow with it in my ear. Yeah.
I don't remember
You had
about
that- you had
255.
that, we didn't have headphones back then. You had that stupid little white one earbud.
But I know I spent a couple of afternoons at Hebrew school with that snaked up my sleeve.
Yeah, my friend Eric did that too. He went to a temple across the street called it was on East 13th Street. The Tree of Life or something like that. Yeah, he did that too.
So that brings us to somebody who's probably a little bit nearer and dearer for you than
To
for
me. Yeah, listen, I gotta say, I honestly did not know who Gerald Fried was until I learned he composed some of the most famous and iconic theme songs that there are, especially near and dear to my heart. He wrote the theme song to Star Trek, and even if you're not a Trekkie, who doesn't know? Ooh, he also did amazing what he was able to do. He did Mission Impossible. He did Lost in Space.
Okay, now I want to be clear on something though, because
Yeah.
when I was researching, and I have to admit, I didn't do like a massive deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote music. He composed music for shows Mission Impossible, Gilligan's Island,
Right.
Man from U.N.C.L.E., Roots. Doesn't say he wrote the themes for those songs. And I'm saying that because even just the other day, I was watching a movie, and all of a sudden, it dawned on me, there was music playing in the background, and I realized, boy, there's music playing in a lot of scenes in background, but while you almost don't notice it, you would notice it if it wasn't there.
No, he did that as well. So he did what I said. He did those intros. He was right. You mentioned the rest that was on my list. He also was nominated for an Academy Award in '76 for creating the score for Birds Do It, Bees Do It, and he was nominated for an Emmy, The Silent Lovers, The Music Warrior, and Napoleon and Josephine, a love story. He
won for Roots.
Right. Oh, yes, he did. He had over 140 composed credits to his name. And then just because that you mentioned about background music, we'll get back to Star Trek a little bit. You did watch Star Trek, right?
Not really.
Well, so all right. So you may not. I mean,
I've seen that.
When they mentioned,
I was never a Trekkie.
Okay, so when they mentioned these particular episodes, I knew exactly what they were talking about. They mentioned that he did scores for the episodes on the original series, including Shore Leave, The Paradise Syndrome, and A Muck of Time. A Muck of Time was when Spock went a little crazy because he had what we would refer to as the 7-year itch. So that was like, wow. It wasn't just the theme song. He did a lot of background scores, and that's what you were talking about, the background music. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how many of the theme songs, the opening credit theme songs he actually wrote.
I'd have to take a deeper dive, but I didn't feel like we had time for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we're moving on to Dave Hollis. He was 47 years old. I think he's the youngest of our recipients this weekend. This episode. He was I'm going to be careful how I phrase this. He's a former Disney executive who worked for Disney for 17 years and had been head of distribution for the company for 7 years. He During his tenure at Disney, he oversaw the release of blockbusters including Black Panther and films in the Star Wars franchise. Now, from what I'm reading, that wasn't exciting enough for him. He decided he was cooped up in corporate America, and he stepped down to support his wife in running her business. It doesn't say what the business really was. Did you see anything about it?
I did not. Because really the only thing that makes Dave Hollis more, worthy of something more than a salad is a tweet he did just under 2 years ago. Did you see that?
No, all I have is that he collaborated with
let me tell you.
Go ahead, go for it. Go for it.
If you found out, this is what he tweeted slightly less than about 18 months ago. If you found out you had only 2 years left to live, what would you do differently with the time you had left? Now take that answer and set some goals to implement today. Tomorrow isn't a guarantee.
Oh, that's almost our theme.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And he wrote that and died less than 2 years, just under 2 years later. Now, he did struggle. He did deal with heart-related issues for an extended period of time, so it is entirely likely and even probable that he had reason to believe that, he might not live to a ripe old age.
I don't know, because I saw a lot of, he had like a rocky marriage. They worked really hard on repairing the marriage. So why would you work so hard at your marriage if it's going to give you more stress than you're going to leave the earth?
Well, they were divorced, so.
Yeah, no, it says that they collaborated on live streams, podcasts, and organized live-performing conferences in their podcast Rise Together. They focused on their marriage, but then I read, they lasted until 2020. Their troubled marriage ended in divorce in 2020. I also have here that he wrote a couple of books. He wrote motivational books. His book, Get Out of Your Own Way, that's probably a good one for me. And A Skeptic's Guide to Growth and Fulfillment was also published in 2020. And he released Built Through Courage, Face Your Fears to Live the Life You Were Meant For in 2021. And that's about as much as I have on him.
All right. So let's move on to what's
Bill
unfortunately something of a all too common theme on the show, on Over the Rainbow. Kyle Jacobs, country singer, country writer, songwriter, musician, probably most famous for being married to Kelly Pickler, who was one of the early breakout stars from American Idol. Even though she came nowhere close to winning. She was eliminated in 5th place when she was eliminated. Right. So I guess, she made it through several hundred other singers, but definitely is one of the bigger, one of the most successful careers.
Yeah, she not a lot, just because you were on American Idol doesn't mean you get to go on and have a career, and she managed to do that. So
Right. And it's not, oftentimes the runners-up end up with very successful, bigger careers than some of the champions. They actually did a reality show on their marriage, the two of them.
I know.
I want to remind everybody that 988 is the suicide hotline. There's somebody who can take your call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In some ways, I'm not morally opposed to the concept of somebody choosing to end their life. So, someone is very ill or very old and suffering, much like somebody, unfortunately, who's going to be featured shortly. President Jimmy Carter has decided not to be treated, but is being kept comfortable at home in what is being reported as his final days. I understand that, but and I understand. I have said often that we cannot continue to stigmatize mental illness and depression, but at the same time, somebody who not only kills themselves, but kills himself by shooting themselves in their home for their family to find them is something I find, I cannot help but find reprehensible. How do you re-enter the house, much less the room, when your loved one has blown their brains out in this room, in this home? How does that
It's pretty selfish, huh?
Yeah, I like I said, I have empathy for people who have reached that point. I have empathy for people who are dealing with mental illness. I have had friends and family who have struggled with that. But at the same time, there are ways to end your life without torturing your loved ones. And I can only see that as a parting choice to make. And that takes that almost automatically takes him out of the lives we celebrate.
Okay.
So, 988. That's the takeaway from this. 9888 is there. If you are dealing with depression, if you're dealing with issues, if you think you're going to hurt yourself or others, 988. Kyle Jacobs has given us another opportunity to talk about 988. That's really me. That's all I want to spend on Kyle Jacobs at this point.
Okay. So he didn't just make the list because he happened to be Kelly Pickler's husband.
Right.
Okay.
Here we give a quick mention to Bill Shields, who
70 years old.
A newsman.
I actually see cancer kind of running right through our show.
Now he had lung cancer several years ago, survived it, then was re-diagnosed in January. I do want to recognize his kind of attitude. He asked if it was fatal. The doctor held out his palm, says, "They're all fatal, but you're still walking around." He did joke. He said, "I'm lucky. How many people can say they got two different kinds of lung cancer?"
Now the article, well, from what I was reading about the way that he reported, well, he's an Emmy Award-winning reporter. I'm not familiar with him.
Okay.
Were you?
No. That's why. I don't think there's
so,
much more to say about him, to be honest with you.
I just want to say, even though I was unfamiliar with him, when I read about him, I kind of wished that I had known him more. He just sounded like a very thorough and invested newsman. It said, I just have one little clip here to read and we can move on. It says that, let me just see. It said in the article I read, there's a little nugget there that says he reported from high atop Mount Washington in the winter and from the ocean depths off Florida with treasure hunters, and stood in front of cameras during more storms than he'd care to count. So I think that's worthy.
not to be overly cynical.
Yeah, well, no, not you.
You have just read the obituary for literally every single reporter in every single local station in the United States of America. You can change the name, and that description is still going to be 100% accurate for virtually every single one of them.
Reporter?
Yeah.
Or just for him?
No, for every. That's what I'm saying.
Really? I don't know. I mean, really? I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of like the way that came across.
Right.
But,
what
anyway,
obituary is going to say he was a lazy son of a bitch who sat on his ass? They're all going to talk about how devoted he was to getting the news out there and the stories he reported on.
I'm sorry, you have some reporters that are safe and nice and dry in the studio, and you have the schmucks in the middle of the
to get the seat in the studio. They've all spent many years standing out in the rain.
If you say so.
I know so.
Okay.
I know so. Now here's somebody who has had an impact on all our lives in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Is Shoichiro Toyoda, who is this, obviously of the Toyota family. His father, I believe, was the founder. No, his grandfather.
No, he was the founder. Okay, I might have maybe read it wrong again, but I read it 3 times, and the way it came across to me was
his grandfather founded Toyota Automatic Loom Works.
Right.
His father founded Toyota Motors.
Correct, and he is the father of the current chief executive, Akio Toyoda. And
so obviously, leadership of the Toyota company has stayed in the family.
Yep.
For I'm pretty much going on 100 years. But he shepherded the company through one of its major transitions, or 2 of its major transitions. Toyota becoming a major
brand
player in the United States and internationally in general.
Yeah, I had it, to making it into a brand that was competitive in the U.S. and globally, but that's basically what you just said. So
yeah. I mean, originally the original Toyotas, the original Hondas, the original Datsuns, which ultimately became Nissan, were inexpensive, small cars.
Kia too.
And they were cheap cars made cheaply. The later generations, and we're talking about in the late 70s, they were still generally small cars.
Yeah, I'm thinking when the 80s.
Well put together.
Yeah, in the 80s, they were pretty much. Yeah, in the 80s, the value on a Toyota was pretty solid.
But what you were starting to see in the late 70s, early 80s were cars that also had some style, some panache. The Maxima for now it's Nissan. The Honda Accord started to become a much nicer sedan. Toyota's had the Cressida.
Mm-hmm.
They had the nameplate. As a matter of fact, they're reviving the nameplate, the Crown. The Crown is new to the United States, but it's not only is it not new to Toyota, it's one of their original nameplates going back to the 40s. It just wasn't very successful. It wasn't a very well-made car. It certainly did not translate well in internationally. Now it's going to be like the leading Toyota, the crown jewel of Toyota. But not only did Toyota preside over the evolution of the Toyota car company becoming known for quality and style and innovation, he also took it to the next step to directly compete with the European luxury sedans by creating Lexus, an ultra luxurious or comparatively luxurious Toyota for substantially more money. As a matter of fact, one of the early criticisms of the first models of Lexus were they were, Toyotas with makeup, and that wasn't entirely untrue. Now they are much better cars, and there's similarities between some Lexuses and Toyotas.
They probably use the same body.
Yeah, and there are things that they use that are similar, but the quality of the Lexus it's not just an expensive Toyota, but these are some of the innovations that Toyota brought to
Toyota.
To Toyota.
Right.
He was managing director in 1961, so he definitely shepherded it through its significant introduction to the United States market and its growth in the U.S. market. They've actually now they're battling with a little bit of their own success. They became the first successful mainstream marketer of hybrids. The Prius and some of the others, they finally created that market that they have been slower to both plug-in hybrid electric and all electric cars. They're being a little bit left behind as the electric car market grows more substantial. But I frankly have no doubt that Toyota will step up and catch up and reestablish its position in that part of the market as well. They've just been too successful for too long to be left behind. You have anything else on Toyota?
No, we could move on to another founder and another family, Oreck. What's his name? David Oreck, 99 years old. That's pretty incredible. He was the founder of Oreck Corp in 1963. I did know who he was. I had his vacuum cleaner, and I got to tell you, it was a pretty damn good vacuum cleaner.
His wife called. She wants it back.
What?
He said you have his vacuum cleaner, and they would like it back.
No, it's back already. I lost that in 2012. But yeah, I had the vacuum cleaner, and it was a very good vacuum cleaner. One of the great things about that vacuum cleaner, though, was that if you bought a particular model, it came with like prizes. So along with the vacuum cleaner, I got a dust buster type vacuum, and like there were other things you could get with it. So you didn't just get the vacuum cleaner, you got other products that Oreck was putting out, all in the same deal.
But I was surprised to learn.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn about his success. He didn't start the vacuum cleaner company until he was in his 40s.
Oh, no.
Before that, he was a major player with RCA.
Yeah, well, he was...
in the early days of television.
He was in the Air Corps and with the Army, and when he got out, he was learning his craft. He got a job, and he honed his skills in upstate New York in a part of New York called Bruno, and that's where he was. The company was a distributor for RCA television and Whirlpool appliances for New York. So what would be the tri-state area, right? New York, New Jersey, Connecticut.
Yeah, but I mean, he was with David Sarnoff of RCA going to Washington, D.C. to help create the standards for color television broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sarnoff didn't just own RCA. Sarnoff played a major, major part in what was to become network television and the independent stations and the three networks and all of that dominated up until cable became the big thing, and then satellite. Now, of course, streaming is essentially, made the networks a big player. But for what communication was from going back before television, which is why RCA was one of the dominant, because RCA was dominant in radio, naturally became dominant in television. He was right hand to one of the three minds that formed television, what became television for the next 50 years. He was right there and a big part of that. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, he married into the Sarnoff family. I'll look for that in a minute. Yeah, his first marriage was to Paula Sarnoff, David Sarnoff's niece. After, as you mentioned, he had enlisted right after Pearl Harbor and continued to fly. He had a charter aircraft company and had a collection of planes for his personal use. But he also came of a time where machines were machines. You didn't have to be. You could do washers and dryers, and then know how to do vacuum cleaners, because a machine was a machine was a machine. They were just basic principles. I don't have that.
Right. Well, it also says that he took over as the CEO at the Louisiana, Mississippi RCA distribution, and in that capacity created several national marketing strategies for RCA. So I would think that would have something to do with how big RCA became as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He was a key player, but like I said, he also, he could fix airplanes, and the same skill that let him work on airplanes let him work on washers and dryers and appliances, and led him to develop. He took over a failing vacuum cleaner company and turned it into a major success, and also figured out how to market it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the way that we have direct to consumer right now, that all started with him.
Well, it did. He didn't go direct to consumer. He got it introduced by showing hotels this vacuum cleaner that weighed only 8 pounds, which seemed too flimsy for the whole market. But the hotels loved it because you needed to move them all over the place and carry them from floor to floor.
Right.
And then, even though it was light and it appeared insubstantial, it proved to be pretty, reliable.
Well, so I mean, I have that the use of mail direct marketing for the vacuum cleaners. In the past, the product was only sold on showroom floors. By the time the company was sold in 2003, the 8-pound Oreck vacuum had become the premier high-performance floor product. And his later years, Mr. Oreck became very active in education. See, I like that part, obviously. He was a featured lecturer at many leading universities about entrepreneurship and branding. And he was also committed to educating the younger generation about America's role in World War II.
Going back to vacuum cleaners for a moment, vacuum cleaners were also marketed door to door. I mean,
right.
Even I had a door to door vacuum salesman.
That was Kirby, wasn't it?
House, huh?
That was Kirby.
Maybe. I think there was another one as well. We actually had a door to door vacuum salesman come to our house about 25 years ago. And my brother-in-law, he wanted to buy it so bad, but it's like a $400 or $500 vacuum cleaner. Mm-hmm. But he was hook, line, and sinker. He loved it.
Yeah, I
Now,
know. When I think about that,
he's Jewish, but we didn't have any Brooklyn Jews. You promised me a Brooklyn Jew.
Yeah, at the very end.
Yeah. Okay, I'll wait.
I think.
Okay, because all I see is a pesky whatever it was, or frisky or something.
No, there's a gentleman that we have for our new little segment.
Yeah, you're gonna be mistaken.
Okay.
But let's go ahead.
All right. So
what's next on our list?
We got Nala, the African lioness. She also. So you know what? It's not just humans that get cancer, because she also passed from cancer.
Now, I have to admit, this one annoyed me a little bit. I didn't do a deep dive, but the story I read made a big point of how long she was at the zoo, made a point of mentioning how long tigers live in the wild and in captivity. Never mentioned her age. The story I saw did not mention her age, even though it danced all around it. I'm really aggravated. I wasn't aggravated enough to look for another story.
No, the one that I read said she came to the Lake Tobias Wildlife Park when she was 6 months old.
Okay. How old is she now?
They didn't say. But if she's a lioness, okay. But if she's a lioness, all right, she's a lioness, and then she was getting ready to mate, so you kind of have an idea.
But that's my point.
Okay. It said she was a favorite at the zoo for zookeepers and visitors alike. And, you know, they were getting ready to partner her, like to have babies. So you can kind of, you know, she's probably about 3 or 4, because that's mating. So Nala and her partner Leo recently moved into their new facility in December, and were enjoying a spacious habitat. The cancer was an aggressive cancer, which caused her health to deteriorate rapidly. And then it says the zoo will have companion lions joining Leo.
Okay. Well, now you said she was, based on the fact that she was getting ready to mate, that she was maybe 3 or 4, and I don't know. But here's the quote I have: is we're grateful Nala was part of our zoo family for such a long time. Now, if an animal is supposed to have a life expectancy of 17 years, 3 or 4 years, the quote would be, "We're sorry her time with us was so tragically short." If she died at 4 or 5. So
right, but we don't know what that is. But that might be lion years. Like, I don't know, are lion years the same as doggy years?
That's what they're no. When they're talking about 17 years and not talking about it in terms of equivalent to the 7 doggy years.
I don't know. I can't tell you. I can tell you that
it aggravates me. It didn't aggravate me enough to find another story. It just aggravated me. The story. It's bad reporting.
Moving along, there's Parker the ferret. It did mention that Parker was 7.5. He also had cancer. It didn't say how old he was when he got to the zoo. It says
but he was playful and spunky.
Yes, it says that he lived at Zoo America North American Wildlife Park in Hershey since 2015, and it said he was 7.5. So I guess we could do the math on that. It said that
is that 7.5 in ferret years?
I don't know. It said he had lots of personality and that he was spunky. Here's the part that I like.
But he was also playful.
Yeah. Well, this is the part I like. So, you know, like when you see on the TV late shows or whatever, they bring on educational animals. Well, he was an education ferret, and he made public appearances at the zoo. He also traveled off-site for educational programs to teach about black-footed ferrets.
Every headline I saw, they were just coming up the same copy. Every headline I saw said
spunky
and spunky.
Oh no, I didn't see that. It all said spunky. When I first saw it, I didn't know his name was Parker. I thought his name was Spunky. We're moving
so now moving on to revive. We have not been able to do our Yarzheit show, and I would like to at least incorporate a couple of Yarzights into our regular weekly shows going forward. And as a preview of that, just because it popped up in my feed the other day, this is the anniversary of the passing of somebody who meant a lot to me. And I can't believe this is who you thought was our Brooklyn Jew.
I saw Brooklyn. I thought...
Don Newcombe. Don Newcombe was one of the great pitchers of the Dodgers in the 50s. He was one of the first dominant starting black pitchers in baseball, coming up right behind.
A lot of firsts for him.
Coming up right behind people like Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella.
Yeah, I thought it was very appropriate because February is Black History Month. So that the fact that he came up, lots of firsts. 1949, he became the first black pitcher to start a World Series game. He was the first pitcher to win Rookie of the Year.
He not only won Rookie of the Year, that same year he was MVP.
Yes.
Or I you know what, I hadn't looked it up. I might be misremembering. I think he actually won Cy Young and MVP.
I was about to say, yes, he won the MVP and the Cy Young Award. Well, it just says, it didn't say the same year, it just said during his career.
The same year. He won both those awards in the same year.
It said he was the first black pitcher to win 20 games in one season. In his inaugural year, no, he won the Cy Young Award in his inaugural year. So, right, rookie year.
Oh, so he won the Cy Young and the Rookie of the Year?
Yeah.
Okay, that could be what I'm complaining. I have to admit, I didn't go back and look up my notes on Newcombe.
It says he became the first pitcher to win the National League MVP and the Cy Young in the same season.
Okay, well then, yeah.
Playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers, he debuted for Brooklyn on May 20th, 1949, becoming the third African-American pitcher in the major leagues. Oh, who did you say he followed? Jackie Robinson, and who was second?
And Roy Campanella, not as pitchers. Okay. No, but they were among the first prominent black players.
Right.
When I was a kid, and we're talking 5th grade, 6th grade, I read books, and most of them were by this guy, Milton J. Shapiro. And he wrote biographies of sports stars, and at least the ones I read were, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Jackie Robinson, Duke Snider, and Roy Campanella. I would read these biographies, especially of the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Robinson, Campanellas, and they always talked about Don Newcombe.
Okay.
Because he was one of the key pitchers on that team, plus also one of the leading black athletes when that was first starting to happen. And there were no books on Don Newcombe. He was always a major character in everybody else's biography. But there wasn't a Don Newcombe biography. So by the time I was in 7th grade, I was going to the Grand Army Plaza Library, the main library, and looking up microfilm. I did this at least 5 times. I was going to write, at 13 years old, I was going to write a biography of Don Newcombe.
Okay.
So I'm looking at, like I said, I'm reading, New York Times from the 1950s. Just started, because that's how I figured to do the research. Obviously, I never wrote the book. But years and years later...
It's never too late.
Well, I sort of got not my opportunity per se. Years later, when I had my own radio show, I got the opportunity. I'm trying to remember how it happened. I think I reached out to the Dodgers, and they got back to me. And I got him as a guest on my show. And what made it significant to me, because where Jackie Robinson obviously was an important player and an important person, as was Campanella, especially because of the tragic way his career ended. in a lot of ways, Newcombe went on to be way more important because Don Newcombe was one of the first ball players to go public with his issues with alcohol during his career. And it nearly ended his career. It nearly ended his marriage. He got a lot of support from his wife. He dealt with his alcoholism to the point where for the next, certainly when I interviewed him in 2012, he had spent 30 or 40 years. He was one of the guys who would go to every spring training camp, every team, and speak to the players, do a thing in the clubhouse on substance abuse and the programs that were available to help both within Major League Baseball and outside to the general public. That's what he devoted his life to, helping players deal with substance abuse. And, when you're a professional athlete, not only do you have time on the road, you have money and you have people who want to buy you drinks and all this other stuff. There's just too many ways that you can fall victim. He became a key person in helping to cope with that issue, which I think was tremendous. But the one other thing I remember about my interview with him is it felt like I asked him one, maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then let him go. And he would just go and tell the most incredible stories. I'm trying to find a tape of that interview to get cuts for when I do this. But it meant it was one of the interviews that meant a lot to me to be able to do. As we wrap up this week over the rainbow, next week I know we have.
Can I just ask you a question before we wrap up on Don Newcombe? Yeah. So in my notes it says that he was inducted into the Baseball Reliquaries Shrine of the Eternals in 2016. Do you have any idea what that is?
I don't have a clue.
And then it says, and into the initial class of Legends of Dodgers Baseball in 2019. But when I read about the shrine, I'm like, I gotta ask Mark about that.
Yeah, no, I don't have any idea.
Okay, so
we've got a legend of comedy and TV we'll be talking about next week, and an actress who's also as an actress she was married to another legend of TV is probably a better way to say it. Do you have anything else that you want to add as we wrap up?
Oh, no, as we wrap up, we always like to remind you that you should show your love for those you care for today because you never know what tomorrow brings.
Another one bites the dust.